Hi folks, I'm Anton, co-founder and CEO of Keyboard Cat Studio. And today I want to talk about tooling. What tools you might need to ship a game, and how to do it on a budget, as well as what we personally did. To set the background for this discussion, strictly speaking, you need very little tooling to actually ship a game. Very, very few things out of what I'm gonna discuss is mandatory. But by far the most expensive thing that you're gonna pay for in the course of development are your people. So if, let's say, you have a person that you're paying $100 an hour for, or if that person is working with you, but they could earn $100 an hour somewhere else, if you can get a tool that's gonna save them 5 hours a week every week and pay $100 for it, that's a net saving of $400 a week. And if you are able to afford the upfront investment, it is a smart choice to pay for it. First, I want to discuss things that will not be directly tied to making your game, but things that are gonna make your day-to-day life a lot more pleasant and a lot more efficient. First of all, you need something to run your tools on. Most mature studios have an in-house server room where all their servers run, and they have IT personnel and staff. Since we are an indie studio, we have a server box that is currently under my table. And what you can do is you can either get an old gaming PC that your friend is trying to flip on eBay for cheap, and put in a couple of NAS grade hard drives into it, or get one of 2 generation back servers or workstations off of eBay and put in a couple of hard drives into that, and get yourself a nice server that is going to host your build farm, that's going to host your version control system, your FTP servers, etc. For relatively cheap. You can generally have a build for under $600-700. It is going to serve you for the entire duration of the projects and potentially longer. It's more or less a one-time investment until you have to replace something. Although you can do the same thing with a machine in the cloud, let's say AWS or Microsoft Azure, you're likely going to pay a lot more for it, to the tune of $3,000 to $4,000 per year. So if you're on a budget, I would suggest looking into a self-built solution. It's going to take you some time. You'll need to install Linux on it. You'll need to learn how to set up probably RAID 1 for your hard drive redundancy. But at the end, you're gonna get a very good solution for a fraction of the cost. Next thing on the list is a version control system. And if you don't know what a version control system is, in essence, it is a piece of software that allows you to keep track of all the changes that every person makes on your project and propagate them to everybody. So at any given point, any programmer or artist has the same set of changes. Before version control systems existed, you were forced to copy over files from and to FTP servers. Obviously, a very error-prone setup. So you should really invest into one. There are two possible solutions here, Perforce or Git with LFS extension. I would personally suggest Perforce. It is an industrial grade solution, pretty much standard in all the gaming studios. It is what's called a centralized version control system. It's good for a couple of reasons. It deals with binary data very well. It allows you to lock files, which means that your designers and artists who work primarily with binary data, your asset files, your textures, your visual scripts, whatnot, can easily figure out who's working on what at any given point and synchronize. Your other option is Git with LFS, which stands for Large File System. The upside is that Git is free permanently, while Perforce is a proprietary system that you have to pay for once you go past 5 users. The downside is Git does not have any locking mechanisms and has a lot harder time dealing with large amount of binary data. You can either self-host Perforce server or Git server, which is what I recommend, on the box that you have already assembled, or you can pay for cloud versions if you have the budget for it. Something that is not said enough: back up your data. We are using AWS S3, which stands for a simple storage service, to back up all of our project data weekly. It costs us somewhere to the tune of 50 cents per month. Just set it up once and forget about it. It is not a fun experience to realize that a week before you want to ship your game, your hard drives are dead and you need to try to scavenge whatever build you can from computers of people that you're working with. If you're not working in an office, which is probably most of us right now, and you are trying to set up your infrastructure from home, what you want to invest in as well is dynamic DNS solution. The way it works is there's a small program that runs on your server box that broadcasts your current IP address that your provider assigned to you to your dynamic DNS provider, and they are binding that IP address to your domain name so that everybody can reach your version control server, your FTP server, whatever else you might host, over a stable domain name. We are using knowip.org, and we've bought a domain name from Google Domains, which cost us in total somewhere around $45 a year, and that makes sure that we don't need to keep track of any infrastructure changes. Next on the list is a build farm. Your artists, your animators, your designers are probably not going to build your editor from source code, so you need something to build it for them and distribute the binaries. The way it works for us, we are building editor binaries on every submit, and we are putting them into Perforce, our version control system. That way our designers can sync fresh binaries every day or whenever they need to and work comfortably. We are using Jenkins, which is a very mature, very well-known build system. The host of Jenkins runs on our server box, and I'm using my personal workstation as a Windows build agent, which you will need to have. You will need to have a build agent for every platform that you are building on. For us, it is only Windows, but if you are building on Mac, you'll need a Mac. If you are building on consoles, you will need dev kits. Now let's have a look at organizational software. First of all, your Office suite of choice. You have two options, either Office for Business or Google Workspaces, formerly known as G Suite, which is basically Google Docs and Google Mail for your business. They are effectively very similar. All of them are going to give you email, Office software, text, and video communications, and they're very similar in price. They're both $6 per month per person. Pick one and use it. We opted for Google Workspaces just because more people from our team are comfortable with that. Next, you want to think about task tracking. Industry standard is Atlassian and Jira, which is free until 10 people on the team, which is good. But what you need to be aware of, it is quite a heavyweight piece of software, and it is not a cheap piece of software once you go past 10 people. We are using Trello, which is a more lightweight alternative that is also free. The next important thing is knowledge sharing software. It's quite hard to get on the same page in terms of all the knowledge on the project, and having a centralized system to keep track of everything really helps. An industry standard solution would be Confluence, which is similar to Jira, free up until 10 people. There are other alternatives like Notion, which is a relatively new solution, but quite a popular one. Unfortunately, it's also on the expensive side at $8 per person per month, I believe. We actually went quite an orthodox route. We are using Google's website visual editor to construct our own wiki, which is a reasonably lightweight and cheap solution, but maybe not the most robust one. Last but not least, in terms of communication, you probably want some sort of company text chat. And here you can go with Microsoft Teams if you have Office subscription, or you can go with Slack. You can have it free, unfortunately with a limited 90-day search history. Or alternatively, you could go with Discord, which is what we did. It has less business-oriented features, but right now it's not a problem for us. And it is easy to pull people into it because of the centralized account system. Now let's get to the juicy part. Let's talk about engines. Realistically, unless you want something very, very particular, you do not want to build your own engine. It is far too expensive, it takes a long time, and generally it is not worth it. Your two realistic commercial alternatives are Unreal 4 or Unreal 5 and Unity. Unreal 4 generally will give you better visual fidelity. It is going to give you slightly better visual scripting capabilities in a sense of blueprints, which will allow you to prototype things a little bit faster. It also has a good business model for indies. You can use it for free in commercial applications up to $1 million in revenue. And after that, you're going to have to pay 5% of your revenue to Epic Games. That is actually waived if you release on Epic Games Store, which is nice. The downside of this is Unreal is a C++ based engine, and the development cycle of features in C++ is generally longer than an alternative in Unity. Unity, on the other hand, is C# based. You're going to generally have shorter development cycles for C# based features. It has arguably better community support and more plugins and usable assets in their store. It is also significantly better if you're planning to release on mobile. In general, pick whichever engine you feel more comfortable with. The differences are not as big to overcome the ramp up cost. If you don't know anything, I would probably suggest going with Unity. We went with Unreal 4 because it is stable and we are all familiar with how it operates based on our previous work experience. For art, you probably have the fewest options. Realistically, for 2D art, you're gonna be stuck with either Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator. You're gonna have to pay Creative Cloud subscription, which is somewhere around $270 per year now. You can try to use GIMP or other free alternatives, but it is likely it's not worth the loss in productivity. If you are able, you can try to hunt for educational licenses if you are eligible for those. For 3D art, actually lately Blender has become a viable substitute. We are currently using Blender. It is completely free. It is supported by a number of AAA publishers. It has decent integration with Unreal 4 and Unity. More standard pieces of software are 3ds Max and 3ds Maya, which will run you about $1,300 per year. Generally, I would suggest to pick whatever your 3D artist is more comfortable with, but if you're learning, I encourage you to have a look at Blender. It's free and it's quite good. In terms of animations, you might also want to look at Houdini, which is a very high quality procedural animation software package, especially if you're aiming for higher production quality for your game. It might be a real asset. In terms of software development, you have some very good choices. Visual Studio Community is free for commercial use in teams up to 15 people. It is a staple. You can use just that and be happy with it. Somewhat popular plugin for it is Visual Assist X, which is going to give you better integrations with Unreal Engine in particular. An alternative that came up in the last couple of years is Rider by Knowlege. Is going to run you about $130 per year, but the feedback is it is generally more responsive than Visual Studio, which tends to be a little bit of a resource hog. And I have heard good things about it from my colleagues, so I encourage you to give it a try. And this is pretty much a full list of what we're running. Although it's a lot of software, if you tally it up and skip some of the more expensive art software packages like Max or Maya, you can run a studio with a high level of comfort for pretty much under $1,000 per year. And it's going to boost your productivity by quite a lot. Did I miss something? Do you know of other great value software packages that help you on a daily basis? Please leave comments under the video, and I hope to see you in the next one.